It's May 12th, 1932. Picture this, the Great Depression, right? Everyone's looking for hope, something to believe in. And who better embodies that than Charles Lindbergh, America's golden boy, the guy who flew solo across the Atlantic? Talk about daring.
He wasn't just a celebrity, he was a symbol. Innovation, resilience. People needed that, especially then, with everything so uncertain.
Totally. But then, this day, May 12th, it all changes. The Lindbergh baby, little Charles Jr., they find him, he's dead. It's like the whole country just felt it. And it's never really gone away, the fascination with this case.
Well, it goes beyond just the tragedy, It's like holding up a mirror to America at the time, all the anxieties, how fame was changing, even how justice worked back then or didn't.
Right, so before we get into the trial, all the craziness of what happened, let's go back. Everyone knows Lindbergh the pilot, but the Lindberghs, the family, they were like royalty, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Living on that secluded estate in New Jersey, Charles and Anne Morrow Lindbergh, she was a writer and a pilot too, they were the picture of success. Adventure, the American dream, all of it.
Until March 1st, 1932, 9 p.m., their whole world changes.
An ordinary evening, turns into a parent's worst nightmare. Baby Charles is gone, missing from his crib.
It's just chilling, isn't it, that empty crib? But the ransom note, that's what pushes this over the edge. From tragedy to crime of the century.
It wasn't just a note, though. It was deliberately written. Broken English, demanding $50,000. That was a king's ransom back then. Planning, you can tell.
Who'd target Lindbergh like that? For money, maybe, but you wonder, was it something else?
That's the question that grabbed everyone, and still does. But back then, investigating it, that tells the story too. Forensic science? It was barely starting out. Muddy footprints, a ladder, homemade, to reach the second floor.
No DNA, no fancy fingerprinting, can you imagine?
Meticulous work, trying to fit pieces together with almost no tools. And the pressure. The whole country was watching, waiting for any news.
That's when the media went crazy, right? This wasn't local, it was everywhere.
Completely. Newspapers every day, radio broadcasts, everyone had a theory. From the investigators to the guy on the street.
Why'd this case grab everyone like that, though? What was it about the Lindberghs?
Part of it, I think, is how bold it was. Not just robbery. It was like attacking the idea of hope. People felt personally involved.
And it wasn't just, people talking. It was a whole nation listening to their radios, hoping for any news about the baby.
You got to remember, this wasn't like today. 24/7 news, right? Yeah. The Lindbergh case, it was all anyone was talking about. On the radio, everywhere. Everyone felt it, the worry, the waiting. And the Lindberghs, in the middle of it, just trying to get their son back.
It's heartbreaking what they went through, at the mercy of these kidnappers, negotiating through other people, even putting coded messages in the newspaper ads, hoping for something.
Desperate, really. And the ransom, it kept going up. $50,000, then $70,000. Huge money. The investigators, though, they were working nonstop. Every little lead, anything.
Some of those little things, they ended up being really important, didn't they? The ransom note, the handwriting, those bills they used to pay.
Exactly. So much mystery. Those details were like clues.
Yeah.
The handwriting especially. Misspellings, grammar, it was all distinctive. Find someone who wrote like that. Maybe you find the kidnapper.
It's like a detective story. Did they have like handwriting experts back then, trying to figure out who the person was?
They did, but not like today with all the fancy analysis. It was more comparing samples, see if the letters match, the spacing, and the marked bills. Each one was like a little trail. Potentially.
Amazing how, even without all the technology, those small things made a difference.
Oh, yeah. And it was those bills that led them to, well, the main suspect anyway. Bruno Richard Hauptmann. Lived in the Bronx. German immigrant.
Over 2 years later. That must have been huge.
It's huge. Imagine this. September 1934. Gas station. Right. Attendant recognizes one of the bills, calls the police, they trace it back to Hauptmann, they search his place, and guess what?
The ransom money.
$14,000 hidden in his garage, plus wood that matched the ladder from the crime scene. Seemed pretty clear-cut.
Hauptmann, he said he was innocent though, right? Said the money wasn't from the kidnapping. Some friend gave it to him.
That's right. Isidore Fish, this friend. Except Fish went back to Germany, died, so they couldn't even ask him. Hauptmann said he was set up, maybe because he was an immigrant, easy to blame. People still debate that even now.
Okay, so dramatic arrest, claims of innocence, but all this evidence piling up. No wonder it was called the trial of the century.
Total media circus. Oh. Everyone watching. Prosecution laid out their case. The money, the ladder, the handwriting, all pointing to Hauptmann.
If it was so obvious, why not plead guilty then? Was it, like, pride? Or did he really think he could get away with it?
Hard to say what he was thinking, honestly. But his lawyers, they had a different plan. Attack the evidence, find little mistakes in what people remembered, things like that. And they said, the police, all this pressure to solve it, maybe they planted evidence.
So they're saying Hauptmann was a scapegoat, the police needed someone to blame.
Risky move. But they were trying to make the jury doubt. Just a little. And back then, remember, forensics, it wasn't perfect. Handwriting's convincing, but not always right. The latter, suggestive, but not proof on its own. They poked holes where they could.
What about this fish guy, the friend? Any proof he even existed?
That's part of what makes it so interesting even now. Fish, he's like a ghost story. Some say he was involved, maybe even planned the whole thing. Others say he's made up a distraction from the real evidence.
Like a movie, almost.
Yeah.
But the jury, they had to decide, right, based on what they heard. So what was the verdict?
Weeks of this, right. Testimony, arguing, everyone watching. Then they decided.
So weeks of this, and finally a decision. What'd the jury say?
Guilty. Kidnapping, murder, the whole thing. Death penalty.
Wow. Even with all the questions, the jury, they believed it, huh? That Hauptmann did it.
It was a lot of evidence, even if it wasn't always, direct. The money, the ladder, the writing, all pointed to him.
Yeah.
But it didn't end there. Not really.
Of course not. It's the Lindbergh case, right? It's been, what, almost 100 years? People still argue about it?
Yeah. And Hauptmann, he insisted he was innocent, right up to the end, 1936, when they,
Yeah.
Even now, you've got people saying he was framed, that they needed someone to blame.
Makes you think, right? All that pressure, the whole world watching. Could they really be objective, the jury?
Hard to say. Mountains of evidence, people saying different things, and the emotion of it all, the baby. Plus, back then, forensics, it wasn't like it is now.
That's what I wonder. What if it happened today? DNA, all that stuff we've got now, would it be different?
Big what if, right? DNA, maybe they find something at the scene, or maybe it clears them totally. Handwriting, too, they can do so much more with it now, the way people use language.
Makes you think, would all that tech get us closer to the truth, or just make it more confusing?
Funny thing that is, we want answers, clear cut. But sometimes, even with the best tools, it's still murky.
And with this case, those unanswered things, that's part of what makes it so, I don't know, fascinating, I guess. Not just a crime, but the idea that some things we might never fully know.
Exactly. It makes you think what really happened. And beyond that, this case, it changed America, even as it was happening. The fear, the way the media went crazy, it left a mark.
Yeah, you said earlier parents got way more protective after. Suddenly the world seemed a lot scarier.
Oh, absolutely. Cult of domesticity, some historians call it. Kids had to be protected, watched all the time. Play dates were planned out, not just, go out and play. Everything outside the home was dangerous, potentially.
That's kind of dark how one crime could change how everyone acts.
It is, but it also changed the law itself. The Lindbergh Law, 1932 kidnapping became a federal crime. FBI could get involved no matter what state.
So something good came out of it.
Yeah.
Terrible thing, but at least they made it harder for that to happen again.
Exactly. The Lindbergh case, it's like two sides of the same coin,
Yeah.
We love a mystery, trying to figure out the worst things people do. But it also reminds us, those things are real. They show how vulnerable we are. Makes us face things about ourselves, about the world, that aren't always easy.
And with the Lindbergh baby, even after all this time, those things still matter, still make us think. It's a story that, well, it grabs us, makes us argue, and shows us that some mysteries, no matter how hard we look, they might never really be solved.
It's true. Makes you wonder, was Hauptmann the guy, or was it someone else? Something we missed.
Yeah.
That's what keeps people coming back to it,
I get it. Well, this has been something else, hasn't it? A real deep dive into, well, history, I guess. Thanks for being here, walking us through it all.
My pleasure. It's a case that deserves to be remembered and thought about even after all these years.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back soon with more stories that make you think, make you wonder, and maybe keep you up at night just a little bit.